Well, hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Become an Author podcast. I am excited as always to have the opportunity to uh, welcome elite martial artists, and all of our guests are elite martial artists. But these two gentlemen, I've been knowing them for a long time, and they have been making history in the martial arts by helping martial arts schools to grow their business, impact leadership. So there's so many things that they are doing. They're empowering through leadership. Entrepreneurs and experts who turn their expertise into books that inspire and educate. And so we're going to jump right in here today. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a new book that's coming out. And, these two gentlemen here, they build the modern martial arts industry. And we really have to, take what does that mean? Because, some things that we used to do in the old days, we just can't do anymore. And for us to become educated on how to be better in the martial arts and be able to translate that in a book is a great way to be able to do that. So today is especially exciting because our guests aren't just successful martial artists. They are two men who have built the modern martial arts industry. And we're talking with Grandmaster Jeff Smith and Grandmaster Stephen Oliver, co-authors of the groundbreaking new book, Extraordinary Teaching, The Leadership Factory. So, hey guys, how you doing? Hello?
Good.
Good.
I
What
see
that
we
is?
got.
We have some delay. Hope not. All right.
Yeah. Hopefully, our internet signals can maintain themselves along here. But it's good. It's good to be with you. We've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks.
Well, it's great to have you guys on. Jeff, how are you doing? Are you able to hear me? You can hear me, but I'm not able to hear you.
You're probably muted.
So as we're getting this together here, and I'm waiting for Jeff to make his connection, so I'm excited about the book that's coming out. I got a copy of it last week. I've been starting to read through it, and this is truly amazing. So what got you guys to make that decision to write this book? I know you have several other books, Stephen. So, what got you excited about writing this book, and what is the purpose, and how can it benefit the industry?
Well, it is kind of interesting. Most of the books and other material that we put out, at least recently, are more focused on how to market, how to get more students, how to improve the revenue in a professional school. But what we find is two really interesting phenomenon with these schools. Number one is behind the scenes, the schools that we work with, the most dramatic impact we have on them is getting their dropout rate to be scary, to be really, really good. But in contrast to that, we've talked to, as you would, I'm sure, guess, hundreds, if not thousands of schools, and it's very rare to talk to an instructor who says, my biggest problem is my teaching sucks and my students all drop out. What they all say is, I'm a great instructor. I'm great at my art. My students love me. If I just had more students, I'd be great. Show me how to get more students. So the hesitation, frankly, the reason we didn't do this book earlier is the fact that most martial arts instructors, strangely enough, think that they're doing a great job at teaching. And usually the reason they think they're doing a great job at teaching is they don't know, one, they don't know their own numbers. So they're not
Hmm.
tracking their dropout rate. But number two, they don't have benchmarks on what's good and what's not good. So they assume that their dropout rate is the same as everybody else's. And, Jesse, as you know, working with businesses of all stripes, just because something's an industry norm doesn't mean it's a good number. An industry norm is mediocre at best. What we're trying to do is get them down to 1 or 2% or even less dropping out for a month, rather than kind of industry norms of 7 or 10% dropping out per month.
That's a very key point there. It's very critical. And I think Jeff is in. Hey, sir, did you make it back in?
Yes. Somebody called when we had just started the podcast, and then I tried to not accept, but then it cut off my sound.
Yeah. Well, glad to have you on. So we were just sort of kicking it off, waiting for you to get back on here. But Stephen, let's start back with you, because I think there's a key part. I can tell people what they can do about this and that, but what makes you an expert? So let's give a little background to you. I mean, I figure everyone in the country, if they run a martial arts school, they're aware of you guys, but there just may be a few that are not. So let's just start back and give us some of your credentials, and that'll give everyone a great insight on how your book and the information that you're sharing, and sort of really makes sense to them, because you are an expert in this field. So let's do that a little bit. We'll back up a little bit and let's give some expertise.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my background was I started with the Junior Institute when I was 9 years old, which is now a long time ago, in 1969, and started running a school, which is kind of laughable for me to call it a school at this point. But I was teaching at the YMCA when I was 14. Took over that program, but ultimately I flew to Washington and drove to Washington, tested for my black belt, and the current world light heavyweight kickboxing champion offered me a job because he was the vice president and head instructor of the place. And so I ended up transferring to Georgetown University, working my way through college, working 60 hours a week for the taskmaster there, Jeff Smith and the rest of the gang. But what I did from there with his support, with June Reed, Jeff Smith, Nick Okinis, with everybody's support on that team, is I put together a business plan, moved to Denver. I opened 5 schools in 18 months, 6 schools in 30 months. By the time I was 25 years old, I was up to about 3,500 active students. And very early on at that mass, I figured out, what we know now, of course, is, you can be really good at marketing. And obviously I was, to get that many students in place. And I had studied what Junri was doing and gone to the Library of Congress and taking courses and so forth. But, when you're running 2 or 3 thousand active students, you're losing, 100, 150, 200 a month, and it gets pretty frustrating. So we went to work on curriculum design, on structure of keeping track of people. Jeff Smith and I were at the time working very closely together. He was running the formerly the Annandale location, Junior Institute, now world champion Jeff Smith, his own chain of schools. And we were working back and forth with everything from how to track people in class, how to keep on top of that, but also how to just build relationship and rapport across big numbers, and how to really support that dropout rate. And again, I always tell people, the whole point of running a school is learn how you don't need to be great at marketing, because your retention is so good. So if I have 500 students and I'm only losing 5 a month, it's pretty easy to replace them. On the other hand, if I have 500 students and I'm losing 50 a month, I'm a hamster on a wheel. Just continuing running in place and not getting very far.
Well, you're correct. That's a big piece. Everybody thinks it's about marketing, but it's about retention. So you don't have to do double work. And the better you can have your retention, that's great. And when you're running multiple schools, that is a lot. I ran 3 schools, and that was a job. So I can definitely understand what you're doing. And let's take and introduce Grandmaster Jeff Smith. And Stephen, you say he's a taskmaster. Well, he's really been a foundation for the who's who. And get her done, what I call it, then this is the reason why we've been able to move to publishing industries, because of he and Grandmaster Joe Corley, and that's what they do. They help you get things done. So
You
welcome
bet.
to the call, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Glad to be here. Congratulations on all the success you've had in your books and your who's who, and really helped martial arts tremendously. A lot of people who are not you know don't understand the backstory to a lot of that. Don't understand how much work you had to do to get that kicked off and to put all of that information on all those great champions and martial arts. Uh, what we call martial arts heroes. And the martial arts heroes, my definition is not just because they're a world champion. It's a martial arts hero with somebody in their community who has been adding to their community and helping their community by, uh, you know, uh, teaching the character development and being a positive influence in their area, in their community. And if you do that, then you're spreading the right words of the martial arts is what we want. And, I remember back in, uh, you know, the Stone Ages when Steve drove his car at 16 years old to come up to Washington, D.C. to test for his black belt. And I was shocked that he drove his car because I didn't even know he had his driver's license. He was only And when he called me, I was at the main headquarters of the Junri Institute, and my switchboard operator said, "There's a Stephen Oliver on the phone for you." And I thought it was somebody selling advertisement or something, because this was almost a year later when I was in Oklahoma and he was testing for his brown belt and passed with outstanding. I mean, he kicked straight up with both legs and could drop into the splits better than John Chung and even Bill Wallace, because he could do it in street clothes cold and do both legs. And so he was a really amazing talent as a brown belt too. But he asked me if he'd come to Washington D.C. and test for his black belt. Well, I thought he was kind of crazy, because Junri back then was flying me and himself to all his satellite schools, and he probably had about 40 of them. And we were doing these belt tests for all of these black belts that had clubs, not even professional schools. There was a few professional schools, but most of them were clubs, at rec centers or churches or at universities. And that's how Steve got going with the Junri program. He was at Oral Roberts University in their program. And so when I saw this talent and he asked to come to Washington, I said, well, sure, but remember, it's not going to be any easier. So I didn't want him to come all that way and fail, right? But so he came, and so he tested, and he passed with what we called outstanding, which is an A on the test, right? And then asked me for a job, and I'm going, well, don't you have to finish high school first? Because he was only 16. And he said, I already did, and I've been accepted to Georgetown University, so I started in September. And this was at the beginning of the summer. So I said, well, okay, we'll find a place for you. And I started him at the switchboard operator. I mean, the switchboard operator, we had one of those big, old, wide, with all the buttons, like you see in the old movies, because we would run these commercials on TV and the switchboard would light up. We would have hundreds of calls coming through. So he had to learn how to do info calls, because he was doing hundreds a day, not 10 or 5, but he was doing a ton. Every time a commercial came on, the switchboard would light up. Now, wow. He would send them out to the schools, and the schools would take them. And at that time, we had 12 schools. But when I started working for Junri, I was at teaching at one of his university programs in my hometown in Kingsville, Texas. And when I was my senior year, he wanted me to come teach for him in Washington, D.C. So I moved out there and in 1970. and started teaching at one of his schools. Eventually, worked my way up to the senior vice president, and then I told him, "Why don't we expand more schools?" And he says, "Well, if you get me more instructors, I'll do it." Because back then there wasn't many black belts around. Well, we had all those black belts from all of our satellite schools that had multiple black belts that weren't getting paid, that were just helping out at the rec centers and stuff. So I started recruiting these guys, and then over the next 3 years, we opened 8 more schools.
Well,
And
this is where this, because that's what this is a really a lot of history that goes into building a successful organization. So when we think about the book, how much of so what is the foundation of the book? I know we have martial artists that are out there and they want to know, well, what's the secret in here that you guys put in there? Because with the history and with everything that you guys have done, so what's the secret? So what's my takeaway?
I could take a stab at that. Obviously, there's a lot of moving pieces, but the one takeaway is we have our finger on the pulse of many of the top 1% in the country schools, right? So and of course they're top 1% or maybe top 5% of the industry because we help develop and get them to that point. But on a weekly basis we're interacting with them. We have 3 video conferences a week. Master Smith, way more than myself, is traveling out and teaching in their schools and visiting them in person and so forth. But we have our finger on the pulse of really what the numbers are. Who has really good retention, who has really good student value, who has developed a huge bench strength of black belts and instructors and so forth. So I guess one of the things to emphasize is, this isn't stuff that worked 20 or 30 years ago. This is stuff that's working right now. US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, right now in the market with schools that we work with on a weekly basis. But kind of the key takeaway, I think, maybe I might summarize it into 2 things. People think that the way they keep their students longer is they come up with cool, new, exciting things to teach them and constantly throw new, different curriculum at them. And I think it really boils down to 2 things. It boils down to relationship, figuring out how to really have the highest level of rapport, the highest level of love and concern for your students, the highest level of recognition, not let anybody fall through the cracks. So it comes down to relationship and goals. If a student comes in and they're training a month or 2 because it looked like a fun thing to do, they're not going to be there very long. As soon as things get a little hard, which they do, they're going to be gone. On the other hand, if they're really focused on, I want to be a black belt, I want to be a second-degree black belt. Heck, when he's talking about when I was a teenager, I wanted to be him. I wanted to be the next world champion, and black belt was a path on that route. But it really comes down, I think, to helping people set long-term goals that are empowering, exciting, and motivating. Then for them to really know that you care, respect, recognize, notice that they're not there, are on top of it, and are have their best interests at heart. So it's relationships and its goals are the 2 key takeaways. And then everything else is about systems in order to create the highest quality physically, mentally, character students through those 2 mechanisms.
Mm. Well, and that, I think that's really key. And with Grandmaster Smith, we see all the people that are influenced, and how do we, cover that of getting that influence? And that's the reason why you read and study. And I know this book will be able to be an avenue for being able to learn those tasks. And I know you guys have classes that's going on. So first of all, where can I get the book? This is the book is what's the name of your book?
The primary title is Extraordinary Teaching, and the website is extraordinaryteaching.com. So
Okay, good.
they can go to extraordinaryteaching.com, and and again, we're still kind of we're kind of still pre-publication. They'll get the pre-publication copy. We're not yet up on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and all the bookstores. It will be within a few weeks. But if they want to get it today, they'll get immediate digital access to the book. We'll mail it to them as soon as it's ready for a print publication. But it's extraordinaryteaching.com.
Well, so how did you we have all these things and the discipline that it takes to, because in order to be a successful school, it has to take discipline.
You bet.
And I tell people that it's a constant education. You have to continue to keep now we have AI technology. How does all these things come into our school? Are your schools, are they receptive to the new teachings, through AI and marketing, and because marketing is changing, and so many martial artists that I meet are still doing what their teacher was doing.
Yeah.
And what we realize that, we have internet now. So, some of those things, they just don't work. And that's the reason why I enjoy, writing about the history, because when we put this book that you have out now, along with the other books, this would be a part of history. And you have to have these things in your library. And I have libraries full of books. I have, going back to you guys when you're sending out the cassettes. I have all this stuff. My wife's telling me, okay, you got to get rid of, we need some more room. Are you really listening to this now? But that was one of the key things I was always intrigued in, about the Joan Rhee organization, Karate International, Sensei Wellendorf. We were one of the first organizations to start actually having memberships in North Carolina. And I knew Grandmaster Wellendorf went up and met with Grandmaster Rhee, and all these things were brought back in. So I think of myself as one of your cousins,
Yep.
because of what my teacher, where he was, because he was cutting edge in the martial arts and way before his time. And so the more that we educate ourselves, so when you think about, having that material, and this is what this book will actually bring out to you and bring out for your schools, that opportunity to continue to re-educate yourself. And I know I've been on a couple of your not podcasts, but your training program.
Our meetings, yeah.
Yeah. And, you guys just, you make me want to go back and open up a school, but, I'm better off to stay where I am and try to work from this end. But any person that's starting up a school, not certain about what to do, or find themselves in struggle, you guys are the easy button. I mean,
Yes.
you've already done that. You've got the new book out. You have the other material. You've got support. You got eagles who are flying together and growing their schools, because the numbers you guys actually turn out, most people don't even believe that those numbers exist. And I think that's a really big part of what we were saying when we first started, is about really having a goal and having a focus, but having mentors. If I've got to reinvent the wheel every time I do something, I'm in stuck land. And
You
so
bet.
this is, how did someone get involved with the organization?
Well, our main website is martialartswealth.com, but certainly if they go get the book, and when they pick up the pre-publication copy of Extraordinary Teaching, they'll get a whole big school growth package, everything from marketing to many other things as well. Absolutely free. There's no charge for that. And then if they're a good fit, we'll certainly let them know about how the program works and how we work with people on an ongoing basis. And what you said is exactly right. It's the mastermind effect is really an important concept. We've got 50 to 60 every week schools that we're working with that are the top people in the country. And I guess Matt Smith and I kind of talk about this behind the scenes. The subhead of the book was originally developing a leadership factory, and he didn't like the word leadership factory because going back to Jun Rhee, they used to call Jun Rhee Institute a belt factory. And I used to hear that Mile High Karate was about factory. And then the current term du jour of the insult is McDojo. And I think it's just hysterical. Is it true that there are people who decide to start schools who are not particularly good athletes. Sure, there are. There's also people who are very good athletes who are crappy teachers and really need to develop their ability to develop and maintain and develop students. But it's certainly not true that high performing schools turn into watered down McDojo belt factories. It's the opposite. What we have is some of the top martial artists in the world. Uh, Tim Harrison, who's up in Illinois. He's a black belt under Jeff Smith and myself, but under Joe Lewis and under Bill Wallace as well. Scott Sullivan, we were just looking at. He was on the original UFC card. He was the U.S. Shoot fighting champion and a tremendously highly skilled kickboxer who has now almost 400 students in Houston. Uh, so the people who are running $1 million, even coming up on $2 million schools are some of the best martial artists in the country. But being a good athlete doesn't make you a good teacher, and being a good teacher doesn't mean you can operate your business. You don't have the marketing, you don't necessarily have the marketing skills, the management skills, the financial skills. To me, the McDojo Belt Factory deal is just broke people having an excuse to excuse their ego by pointing a finger at other people. And again, if you have horrible retention, if your students are dropping out, I did a big tour. Master Smith did a lot of these dates with me around the country. We called it mini boot camps. A lot of them were with YK Kim. And I was telling people, the no matter how good you think you are, most of your students suck, and people would get mad at me. And then I would explain if they're, if out of 20 people you enroll, 15 of them drop out by the time they're a gold belt, and the other 4 or 5 more drop out by the time they're a green belt. That means statistically 80 or 90% of your students never got past 6 months. So they never got any good, and they never going to get any good, right? Martial arts is a distant memory or a distant nightmare for them. The only way to get students to be really good is keep them 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, and have them turn it into a lifestyle, and then keep them from quitting, because once they quit, they start to regress. So it's an unpopular message with those guys who have the one champion. I developed the one guy who wins all the tournaments. Well, so what? If you ran through 1,000 people and you got one good guy, if it was back then, I would tell people Detroit has improved, but I would say, your guys' dropout rate is worse than the worst public school system in the country. Detroit public schools was graduating 45% of their students at the time from high school, which was put them in the worst in North America. Well, any martial arts school in the U.S. is lucky if they're graduating 45% to black belt. We should be ashamed of ourselves if we can't fix those numbers, rather than bragging about the 1 or 2 good people who survived the gauntlet and managed to still be around in 4 or 5 years.
Well, I think that's really true, and Grandmaster Smith, when we go back, and I know you've been out there for a very long time, on the road, working with martial arts schools and legacy, and that's where I think that you guys really are building. You're building that next generation of doing that, and I do want to say I totally agree with that. And every time I hear someone say, a school that's succeeding, got people coming in the door, they're growing, and then someone is complaining about that. And, I always say, well, if you have such great technique and you don't think this other person has it, and he's got 400 students and you got 10, you should make a deal. The deal is I'll teach you my good martial arts. You teach me your good marketing, then, hey, we can have a very happy community. So Grandmaster Smith, I know when we come back and we look at who we are as martial artists, I always look at who I connect with, and are those people successful? I look at connecting back with Joe Lewis, who I used to train with, Grandmaster Wallace, and all these people, and they were great people. So I think one of the concept of what you guys do, you create a legacy of hanging around and you have great people as a part of that. So everyone that's in your organization, they're actually building their own legacy, whether it be the quality of their teaching or the growth of their school.
Jesse, when you talk about those kind of things, it's one of the reasons we put this book together is that I was tired of seeing our best martial artists in the country go out of business or not make any money. And then some school that is not very good martial artist uh, thrive and make money. And what is the difference? The difference is that school had a system. They knew how to do the business side of the martial arts. I always say, your martial arts is here and your business is down here. Well, you got to get them on. If you're a fifth degree or an eighth degree or second degree in martial arts, well, let's be balanced. We always talk about the yin and yang in martial arts and, balancing both sides. Well, that's what you have to do with your business and your martial arts training. We can't do all the training in the martial arts itself and not do business training. I like to equate it a lot with professional sports. You can equate it with doctors and lawyers who are great doctors and great lawyers, and then they go out into private practice and then they go out of business. Professional athletes, some that weren't very good as a professional athlete, then they get into coaching and now they have some of the greatest teams. When you look at the top coaches in our professional sports, they all weren't great athletes. They weren't great players. There's a few exceptions, but most of them are great teachers. And that's what you have to do. So we put this book together to teach people what the important things are. We don't have in that book how to do a sidekick better or how to do this form better or fight better. What we put together is how to run your school better. And the way you run your school better is by learning how to get more people coming in, developing a rapport with them, teaching them how to set goals so their goal isn't just to do martial arts for a few months and then go on to the next thing, but instill in them the importance of being a black belt and the benefits of being a black belt. And when the student understands the importance, and then the instructor becomes a mentor, because as an instructor, it's not just, old school is, well, I'll teach it. If they don't want to learn it, then that's on them. That's not the case. The case is that you have to teach people not just the techniques, but you have to give them the motivation to stick with it, the motivation and goal of reaching a certain level of proficiency, and help them find that goal. And once they do and they put it in writing, now they're on the way. Well, even when we do that, there's still things we've got to do in the class to keep them motivated. There's attendance cards to track retention. So if somebody misses a class. So these are all the things that we have in the book that will help you get more students and keep them longer. And that's the key. Our goal for all of our martial arts schools in our group is to become not just a black belt in business, but become $1 million plus school. And we have so many that have done that now, that now we quit setting the goal at 1 million. We're telling everybody now it's 2 million, because everybody is getting closer to that. And most schools in this country have no idea that you can make that much from a martial arts school in 1 year. But with this book's help, it gives you the framework of how to do all of this stuff.
Mm. And as you mentioned, Jesse, some of this stuff is tried and true, and a lot of it is new and cutting edge, and it's knowing which to mix and match and focus on. I think the mistake people make is revering their lineage without recognizing that those people weren't highly educated in curriculum design, highly educated in psychology, highly educated in classroom management. You can revere the lineage and at the same time continue to improve on the educational methodology or pedagogy in the school. And so what we have done is look at, and again, there's, Master Smith talked about ID cards. I talked to a lot of people about ID cards. They say, oh yeah, we use the software to do that. Well, most of the people who have tried to automate that have screwed up having their finger on the pulse when the student is in front of them, and they have data in a black box somewhere that oftentimes isn't correct. I minored in computer science back when I was in college, and we called it GIGO back then. It's garbage in, garbage out. They end up without their finger on the pulse of, is this student's motivation improving? Is it declining? Is their technique in place? Are they up to date on lessons and all that stuff? And then once you try to automate some of this stuff, you end up with, they get an automated email. I don't know about you, but I don't get a warm and fuzzy feeling when my bank sends me an automated email that says happy birthday. I know there's no human there. If my instructor reaches out personally because I had tonsillitis and is concerned about me, and I get flowers in the mail and I get a personal call and a note, now I feel I've been recognized. No amount of automation replaces that, and frankly, it's going to get, with AI, it's going to get more and more important for there to be a human touch. There was a company here in Colorado called Blue Mountain Cards. They, during the .com bubble, they sold to AOL for, I don't know, millions of dollars. But back then it was cool. Somebody sends you an automated birthday card, you click a link, and there's a dancing chicken singing happy birthday or something like that. Well, it lasted about 2 years because people figured out that I much prefer I get a handwritten note or I get a personal call. At the very least, I get a personal text or something nowadays, rather than some automated thing that goes in. The other thing that Master Smith was alluding to, and to make it really explicit, we spend a lot of focus on the book, as you know, on the upper levels. How do I create this huge bench strength of brown belts, black belts, assistant teachers, support staff in the school? And we ended up kind of calling it the lone wolf syndrome. But so many instructors, they're in there 5 or 6 days a week, they're teaching all the classes, they don't have a support staff. And then when they think about trying to grow their student body, it just becomes more of the hamster on the wheel. Well, we did our black belt retreat and had a good chunk of our members come up and observe. But our school here has 50 assistant instructors at any time on tap who are not paid. They're not they're not on payroll per se. They're paying the school to learn leadership. But any one class, you go out there and there's a 5-to-1, 7-to-1 student teacher ratio. There's just a flood of staff members there, and they've all been taught that their role is to pass on the art, to contribute back to the students, contribute back to the school, and therefore they help the school grow, they help the student quality improve, and they're excited to be doing it.
Well, I think that's really key in being able to capture knowledge. We go to capture knowledge. That's what you're doing with this book, and when authors are capturing knowledge and put it in a place that is accessible. And all you have to do is turn the pages, open the book, and all that information is there. And that's the reason why I say that knowledge is very powerful. And I'm heading to book number 53, but that all it means is I've done 53 things.
Yeah.
And I've done them well enough to put them in print for someone else to try. And so you guys have now brought forth a book, a revolutionary book, to get people to think. See, if I began to think, and if you've got success, and I want to study you. I know one of my heroes is Les Brown. So every time I go, I study everything about Les Brown. So when I'm doing seminars, corporate seminars, Jessie doesn't come in the room. Les Brown walks in, because I know what made Les Brown successful. So everyone really would recommend that you get a copy, get a copy of the book. I think it's really crucial, not just because I'm involved in the publishing. I didn't, and not involved with this book, but involved with publishing, and really trying to encourage people to look at yourself. What is it you have in value in your knowledge that you can now build upon. So extraordinary teaching, the leadership factory. I mean, can you just imagine? And that's what I look at now and where I am in my life is it's just information. And if I can share it with you and help you to become better, then I've done a great job. I've done a service that no one had to wait 10, 15 years to try to get to a place they could have gotten there, 10 years earlier. So as we're wrapping up, is there any final message or anything that you guys would like to let the audience know?
Well, to leapfrog off of what you said a minute ago, Jesse, I, I think a school owner can't underestimate the value of having their own book that is a credibility boost that really shares the philosophy and the background of what they're doing for the school, and is written in such a way that I can give it to the elementary school teacher, or I can, take it to the radio station and be interviewed on the air. There's so many marketing uses of the book, but more importantly, is it just positions you above the run of the mill person. People still have the perspective of you're an author, therefore you're the authority, and so it's a extremely valuable piece of introducing people to the school and introducing them to what you do. So again, kudos to so many martial arts schools who have done a book with you, but you know most of the ones that should haven't yet. They really should be thinking about it, and they should be thinking about the communicating, at least with the first one, with people who are uninitiated, to teach them the value, the benefits, and the philosophy of the school to help really introduce that. And I think the other thing, like here's our previous book. The other thing is, I think on a book is sometimes we overestimate the propensity of people to read a book and underestimate the value of just having something physically that's in their hands that gives them the perspective of what you're doing. Um, I really think that I tell all of our schools, I don't care about the digital version. I want you to have the print version that you're handing in person to people, because if nothing else, I've had people give me books that sat on my desk and I used as a coaster. And then a year later, I pull it out and go, "Oh yeah, I meant to talk to these people." So there's so much value in what you're doing, and for a school to do that. Anyway, that wasn't a comment on our book, but yeah, I think it's
Well,
an important thing for school owners to keep in mind.
and that's what I say to people. It's not about the $19 book I sell. It's
Yeah,
about the $5,000 opportunity because of the book that opened that door for me to communicate. And it also is that foundation builder when people come into my school, that I've got a book and they get a copy. Everybody gets a copy because now that book can influence that you've got your message in there, whether it's a paper book or a children's book or whatever. You are now influencing. And most martial artists, they lose. Your students adore you, but they tend to get awards and recognition and they don't share it with their students. I
hmm
mean, you want to share that book, with this, just like you guys are doing. Listen here, take the book, because we know when you read it, you're going to want to come back, give me more, teach me, teacher, how do I
you bet.
join with you guys? So, Grandmaster Smith, any last words from you?
Well, I just think that there's two things that I want to touch on. One is the importance of your books and what most martial artists, the reason they haven't written a book is because they don't know how. And that's where you come in. You can guide them through there. Our book is a book that is a how-to for somebody to run a martial arts school, and right now they can get a free copy of it, and it has a blueprint. It has also an opportunity to work with us where we can show them hand in hand. It's just like you could do a book on how to write a book, but if they have you to guide them through they're going to do a lot better on it. And that's the same thing with our book. It's the framework. It's to show you the things that you should be, placing importance on, and really think about. Oh, I don't just need to be a black belt in martial arts. I need to be a black belt in business.
Mm-hmm.
what that book is kind of like one of the college textbooks that you would need to learn how to be a certified teacher and a more successful school. So, either way they go, they need to write a book. They need to do better in their growth in their school. And one helps the other because having that book, we teach them how to utilize that book that you have had them write, how they can capitalize and benefit from it, and as well as you've done that for them too.
Well, I do
Yeah,
appreciate you
and just
guys.
a last.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I was going to say just a last word actually on our book is as a martial arts instructor, the delusion is that all of my students love me, and if I just had more of them in the door, I would be great. And the reality is, you're never going to get rid of needing marketing, but you should be always improving the quality of your teaching and the quality of your retention. And the only way you know whether you're a really good instructor is what percentage of your students are you losing on a monthly basis. We want it to be less than 1%, but really, realistically, if it's between 1 and 2%, that's an A or an A plus. But most schools don't measure that number, and they just think that their students love them because the ones that are in front of them are saying good things about them. Number two is, what's your percentage of students who are really setting the goal, serious about and committed to train to black belt? And then number three, what percentage of people that you actually enroll, not just of your current brown belts, but what percentage of people that you enroll from day one as a white belt graduate to black belt? And if that's a low number, it doesn't prove that you have high standards. It proves that you're a crappy teacher and crappy at motivating them. There should be a high retention, a high graduation rate. We should hold ourselves equally accountable as a school system. If a college, I don't care whether it's West Point, Harvard, or local community college, if a college has a low graduation rate, then they're not doing a good job. If they have a high graduation rate, they're doing a good job, and that doesn't mean lowering standards. Some of the highest graduation rates historically have been Harvard, West Point, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. That they have a very high retention rate because people have high goals and expectations when they matriculate into the school.
Well, you're exactly right. Well, everyone, this is Jessie Bowen, and today we have two amazing guests here bringing in information about their new book. So remember, check it out. This is the Become an Author podcast, but it's also for authors who are already doing, and they're part of, trying to make the world a better place through their books, but also learning. So to become an author, our Facebook page is going to start dropping more information on how to. But remember, everyone has a story. You just have to get it out. So this is GM Bowen saying, be blessed, and I'll check you out the next time.